So normally I would review a production when it opens in the West End. Today we're going to be reviewing one that is about to close. Why? Because I want it that way. And that's the way it is. Oh my god, hey! Welcome back to my Stagey YouTube channel. If you're meeting me for the first time, hello! My name is Mickey Joe and I am obsessed with all things theatre. I am your friendly neighbourhood theatre critic here on YouTube, and one of my most requested videos has been a review of the musical and Juliet. And even though I've seen this so many times, I've never actually been to the show in a press capacity, so I never ended up making a review of it properly here on YouTube. But never fear, all of that changes today. So in honour of the show's West End run, which sadly comes to an end on Saturday the 25th of March, after an incredible few years at the Shaftesbury Theatre, I am going to be bringing you an overview of the 5 different times that I have seen this show, which is like low numbers compared to a lot of the show's fans. But this is like a super review because it's not based on one performance, it's based on a bunch. And my history with this show goes back quite a long way. I saw it 4 times in the West End. I saw it on its official West End opening night, and I saw the out-of-town tryout version in Manchester as well, at the Manchester Opera House. So I'm going to be telling you my thoughts about the show, what star rating I'd give it, what I think works about the show, maybe some areas where it could have been improved a little bit, and also my thoughts on the various cast members I've seen over the years. All of that is coming up in today's video. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to subscribe to my Stagey YouTube channel for plenty more content coming very soon, including lots more reviews. Right now, as you are watching this video, I am currently in New York, seeing all of the Broadway shows and hopefully having a great time. So if you want to see my reviews of those, make sure you subscribe. And if you would like access to early and exclusive content on my channel, click on the link in the description and sign up to become one of my YouTube members for just £2.99 a month. Before we start today's video, in honour of & Juliet, comment down below with your favourite memory of the show or your favourite thing about it. Now, let's talk about & Juliet. So the first time I saw this show, it was in its pre-London run in Manchester, and I didn't really know too much about it. I knew it was going to be a jukebox show, but I think even until I saw it, I didn't really get the concept of why it contained the songs that it did. I thought it was just general 90s stuff. But if you don't know, I'm going to tell you. This is a show that uses, for its score, the music of producer Max Martin. And if you don't know who he is, you absolutely will know his songs, because he has worked extensively with artists like the Backstreet Boys and Britney and Katy Perry and Ariana Grande. So much of their back catalogue features within the show. For the plot, we follow William Shakespeare and his wife Anne Hathaway as they collaborate on an alternative ending to the classic Romeo and Juliet, in which Juliet doesn't decide to kill herself simply because her first boyfriend did, and instead decides that she has so much to live for and carries on with her life. The whole thing is very contemporary, it's very anachronistic, but it's fun and it's light-hearted. It is definitely not to be taken seriously. It is very much a party vibe. So I really enjoyed the show when I saw it out of town, so much so that I booked again to see it on its official opening night at the Shaftesbury Theatre in the West End. I then don't think I saw it between then and the end of the world, but when the show reopened post-COVID, I think I got rush tickets on 2 different occasions, and then I recently went back to the show for the very last time, got a standing ticket from the box office and watched it at the back of the dress circle, which was a really interesting experience. I've not often stood in West End shows, but I think & Juliet, it's not that long a show, it's not a particularly intense show, and you can kind of have a bit of a boogie about. You can have a sort of a light dance by yourself, or if you're with people as well. So that was a fun standing vibe. That's one that I could easily recommend. So let me tell you what star rating I would have given this show if I had been officially reviewing it. So each and every time that I've seen this show, I would agree that this is a 4-star show. I think it's really fun. I think it's a little bit of a confusing concept from a marketing perspective. I think trying to tell people what this show is and trying to explain the nature of the songs that it includes and how that corresponds with the plot that it has is a little bit of an uphill battle from a marketing perspective, and that's maybe why the show is ending its run and didn't have perhaps the length of run that it deserved in the West End, because people aren't really sure what it is. Is it for teenagers? Does it have a kind of a broad appeal? I think a lot more children of the 90s ought to have been booking tickets for this show, but didn't know that it was going to be their jam. Unfortunately, it was absolutely their jam. This is such a great show for 90s kids because the score is so recognisable. They're not ultra-modern pop songs. These are the songs of yesteryear with the Backstreet Boys and early Britney. Come on now. But I like the concept. I think it's cute and it is deceptively clever. I'm going to tell you about a couple little clever details that I like within the show. One of them has to do with the writing of one particular scene, because they nod to Shakespearean conventions while writing the whole thing in a contemporary way. The characters speak in a modern dialect and make reference to modern things even though it's set in a historical time, basically. They talk about going clubbing and they take photos, and they definitely have 21st century attitudes to social issues. So for most of the show, Shakespeare's wife, Anne Hathaway, has taken over the writing of the story, and she's trying to illustrate to him that it can be done in a more fun and less tragic way. However, at one point, he sends her away and mischievously adds details into the plot that she wouldn't agree with. And when this happens and he is holding the quill, the script returns to a Shakespearean style. The language is still contemporary, but they speak in iambic pentameter. So if you don't know what iambic pentameter is, this is a particular rhythm in which Shakespeare would write, and it falls roughly along the lines of da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And that sounds very neat and resolved. If Shakespeare ever wanted a character to sound sort of uncertain and unresolved, kind of like Hamlet when he's contemplating his life, he would have it linger for an extra syllable. To be or not to be, that is the question. Extra syllable on the end of the iambic pentameter. But this scene happens between Francois and May as they're sort of nervously encountering each other right before the song I Kissed a Girl. And the whole thing happens in iambic pentameter, and I just think that's a really cool detail. Another cool detail is one that is in the music. So I love the way that these pop songs have been arranged for the stage. There's some really clever moments. I'm going to talk more about the music later on because it's such a huge selling point of this show and probably one of its best creative features. But Max Martin's catalogue of hits is much wider than the ones just showcased in this show. And I'm sure there are other references I haven't noticed, but there's a Britney song called I Wanna Go, the melody of which is referenced in the dance break of Blow, when they're having this clubbing scene right before Juliet swings from the chandelier in the party. There's a little reference to do 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 do, which is the Britney song I Wanna Go. I wanna go all the way. I notice that every time and I enjoy it as a detail. This cleverness and these details are the product of a brilliant creative team. Let's talk a little bit more about them. So Luke Shepherd is the director, and I think he's done such a tremendous job of keeping the whole thing fun and light and buoyant and frothy and charming while still retaining these moments of sincerity and just a little bit of depth, the appropriate level of depth. We don't want it to get like heavy in a Shakespearean way, but we have these characters who are navigating real issues and love triangles and disappointment and family struggles and tension with an ex and marital issues. Like, there are legitimate themes here, but they are played with a kind of sitcom level of intensity. And I think that really works for this show. It's also a jukebox musical that sews the songs into itself so well. And having seen a few recently that just like to place a song at a thematic moment where it doesn't really refer to the characters or the narrative, I so appreciate where work is done to embed songs cleverly into a jukebox musical and to craft details around those songs. Like when we meet a character named May and later on we have a song that says it's gonna be May, there's reasons for that. When we have a character called Francois and Juliet mistakenly nicknames him Frankie, and later we have the lyric like Frankie said, I did it my way in the song It's My Life. It's a clever embedding of music into the book. The book has been written by David West Reed, and I really enjoy this script. I think it's so accessible to a younger audience. It may even get them interested in Shakespeare, and like I said, there's a deceptive cleverness to a lot of the details in it. I said we'd talk some more about the music. It is absolutely the highlight of this show. It has such incredible songs, such crowd-pleasing songs, and it caters to a lot of different tastes. As long as you have a familiarity with this era, there's gonna be a song that you enjoy, unless you resent all pop music that's ever been made, but pop is short for popular, which implies that you shouldn't, because it's popular. They're great songs. Listen, I'm a musical theatre person through and through, and I love all these songs. I grew up with Britney. I had a Britney Spears doll and a little Britney Spears stage. I had Britney Spears badges. I was a very young child at this point, and why I ever had to come out to my parents was a mystery. But that's not the point. You have the Britney, you have the Backstreet Boys, you have the Katy Perry, you have a Bon Jovi moment, you have an Ariana Grande moment. There was a new Jessie J song written for this show, for and Juliet. What I particularly love is the way they use two Britney songs, because it's a fun little trivia fact. In the Britney Spears song Stronger, there's a callback to a lyric in Hit Me Baby One More Time. In Hit Me Baby One More Time, she says, "My loneliness is killing me and I." And in Stronger, she sings, "My loneliness ain't killing me no more." And Juliet gets to live that as much as Britney Spears did. So I enjoy that they've bookended Juliet's experience in the show with the two matching Britney lyrics. I appreciate that very much. Now I want to talk about the design because it is just gorgeous. In my opinion, there are not enough new musical sets these days that really give us lavish, full designs. I love a set that has walls, which this one does. It uses projections, it uses screens, but in just a complementary way to add layers of depth to an existing full set. I think it looks really stunning. I loved the way it looked in the Shaftesbury Theatre. I think that was a great fit for it in the West End. I love the pieces that they fly in. I love that it has the donut revolve in the middle, and I particularly love that they use it well. Briefly to shout out to the choreography, I love the choreography in & Juliet. I think it's so youthful and dynamic and edgy and really contemporary. I think this was a really modern style of musical theatre choreography that still looks musical theatre but feels really fresh. Shout out to Jennifer Webber, the choreographer. But Sutra Gilmore's set just did such incredibly clever things, and the details in it that looked period appropriate but still had a contemporary feel to them. It's so clever to be able to combine those two aesthetics to create the unique world of & Juliet and what that world would look like. Someone else who did the same thing was the costume designer Paloma Young. I am in love with these costumes. The leather jacket that Romeo wears that has the flower print on it, I want it so badly, I can't even tell you. If they were selling it, I would pay whatever. And the show is ending, so if they have spares, like, probably there's other people who want that jacket. But if there happens to be, should I just lurk outside the theatre, buy a skip, and just pray? Because I would wear the hell out of that Romeo jacket, let me just tell you. But all of the costuming, the way that Juliet has this contemporary skirt that still has a sort of a period feel to it, it's very clever. The way that they have these brocade prints and these embroidery that is obviously modern but still gives us the sense of that time period. It's such clever work. It's beautifully anachronistic and I love it. I love the leather trouser that Lance wears with the fleur-de-lis codpiece. I love the sort of loungewear that the nurse gets to wear. I think it's all great. So now I think we should probably start talking about some of the performers that I have seen in this show over the years. So the first couple times I saw it, I was lucky enough to see the original cast, and they were all fantastic. Oliver Thompson still has just such a remarkable, brilliant voice. I loved the way he characterized William Shakespeare. He did it with authority and humor and charm, but still just such a level of ego and arrogance that you liked him as a character, but you definitely wanted to see him put in his place by his wife, Anne Hathaway. She was played by Cassidy Jansen. At every single performance I saw, I think I always saw Cassidy in the role. Cassidy won the Olivier Award for Best Supporting Actress in a Musical for her performance, and I was so thrilled for her because it is a fantastic performance. When I saw this in Manchester and we didn't really know who all these characters were, the first message I sent to a friend who asked how the show was after I left was, "It's great. It's Cassidy Jansen's show," because Anne Hathaway is such a fantastic role. She gets this belty Celine Dion song. She gets to be tongue-in-cheek and hilarious throughout the first act as this long-suffering wife who's just enjoying having a night out and partying with the kids, who desperately needs a glass of wine. Like, she's the best. She's just fun, but then she has such emotional depth that she reveals to Juliet, and the show really comes to be completely about her, and you come to find out why she is pushing so hard for an alternative ending to this story. Cassidy played it beautifully, and she never didn't knock that Celine Dion vocal squarely out of the park. She was so good. So, as for the title character, I saw Miriam Teakley play Juliet 3 times. I saw Bessie Ewer play Juliet once, and I saw Zara McIntosh on my most recent visit playing Juliet as well. And I think they all had different strengths. I was really sad not to find an opportunity to catch Grace Moat playing Juliet, and I didn't see Daniel Fiamania or Rashani Abbey in the role either. I'd have happily gone to see all of them, but every Juliet that I saw had a different strength to her Juliet and played it in a slightly different way. It wasn't until I saw Bessie playing the role that I really thought of her as a teenager, and there's a comic line in the show about her being like 14, and then they retcon that to make the characters all in their 20s rather than the historical character of Juliet, who was creepily young in the William Shakespeare play. But she really feels like someone who up until recently had been under the thumb of her parents and was just beginning to find her way in the world, rather than Miriam and Zara, who played it more like a young woman who was already confident. This, I think, was my thing with Miriam Teakley's performance, is she feels so confident at the beginning that she doesn't feel like someone who needs to find her confidence and needs to find her voice. She comes in so strong and so determined and so fearless that you don't really get why she would be in this position in the first place. When the revelation comes at the end and she sings Roar, it doesn't really feel like she's had to learn that. It just feels like she's had to navigate situations that she's found herself in. I do enjoy Miriam's take on the character though, because I don't think anyone landed the comedy in that script the way that she did. All of Juliet's little mannerisms and the characterizations, she was so perfectly tuned into what the character of Juliet in this version needed to be, where she's this confident young woman who befriends easily, and she really nailed Juliet's comedy the best. The very first line of Oops, I Did It Again is hilarious when she delivers it. I can still see and hear Miriam doing the line where she's in the bathroom and she looks at her own hair and she says, "How's my hair?" And then she looks and she says, "So good." Like, I think she's hilarious in terms of the characterization and the delivery of the script. And also her moments of sass when she eventually does do the "Hey, I'm not done," and she sings Raw. No one has been quite as fierce as she is in that moment. Zara, I think, delivered my favourite vocal as Juliet. I really liked where it sat in her voice. Previous to this show, she had been an alternate in the London cast of Six. I got to see her playing Catherine Howard, and this sits in kind of a similar place because that's a pop style score. So getting to hear her sing this pop music and singing the Britney and the Katy Perry, she was really at home with that, and I thought she sounded fantastic. I'm a big fan of hers. The other thing I love about this show is there are tremendous roles in the supporting cast. Tim Mahendran was always wonderful as Francois, just nervous and full of heart and funny in his own very charming way. I really enjoyed Billy Luke Nevers, who had understudied the role and then replaced subsequently. I thought he was also brilliant. David Badella, as this veteran award-winning actor, brought this tremendous status and class to the role of Lance, and this faux French accent that gets mocked later in the show, but also like an underlying Silver Fox kind of a sexuality. Like, he had this energy about him that was, I'm not going to say compelling here on camera, but like, he was making it work. He was rocking the leather trouser and fleur-de-lis codpiece. That's all I'm going to say. And his chemistry with Melanie LeBarry as the nurse was delicious. Melanie LeBarry was sensational. It was such a shame that Cassidy Jansen and her would always share an awards-winning category, because there's like 3 levels in this show where you have the leading actress, who is Juliet, and then you have Anne Hathaway, which is such a great, heavily featured supporting part, and then the nurse, which is a slightly smaller part. But Melanie LeBarry was so good. She deserved recognition for this performance. I'm so glad that she got to go to Broadway and be part of the original Broadway cast of this show, and that her talent has been recognized. She was hilarious, and so much of this characterization and the way that it's now being performed must have come from her. And it feels like there's a lot of her in it, because it's her kind of comedy and her comedic delivery, but also the way that she uplifts Juliet at the end with the Pink song, Effing Perfect. Like, it's so Melanie LeBarry, and it was just a beautiful moment that would get applauded in the early few times that I saw the show when she first delivers the title of that song. And also, what doesn't get talked about is her vocal. Melanie LeBarry can sing up to the rafters. I also need to talk about Jordan Luke Gage and Tom Francis as Romeo. Both so funny, both sang the hell out of the role in different ways and found different ways of characterizing Romeo with a certain level of dumbness, shall we say. And I mean, he's got some great lines. about just like having a lot of feelings and being very charming and very passionate, but not really thinking things through all that much. And there's another great role in the character of May. I saw Alex Thomas Smith playing this role, I saw Joe Foster playing this role recently, and I saw Aaron Blair Manget playing this role in the original production. I thought all of them brought something different to this character, but certainly in the more recent portrayals that I've seen, there's this extra added level of sincerity because they've been non-binary performers playing what has now been clarified as a non-binary role, really. I'm going to talk more about that momentarily, but I really appreciate the depth and honesty and authenticity that you could feel through those performances, and it made the song I'm Not a Girl, Not Yet a Woman a really powerful moment. So I said I would talk about a couple areas in which I think the show could have been improved. Initially, I had a couple of issues with the depiction of May. I think what they've done to rework the show slightly post-lockdown has improved this, but still I'm not completely sure where it sits with me, because you have this gender non-conforming character. The word non-binary, the word trans, never once used throughout the show. The word gender I don't think is ever used specifically either. And May is a young character who is still very possibly like coming to terms with their identity and their place in the world and isn't really labeling anything specifically, and there is a nod to this when the character of May is first introduced and Shakespeare said, "Isn't that a girl's name?" and Anne Hathaway challenges him on his position about this and encourages him to just let May be themselves, and that's really all that is then said about it. It gets referenced vaguely further on throughout the show, and a lot of the lines that referenced it in the original version have been tailored and tweaked slightly to make them a little bit more palatable now, in conjunction with the non-binary performers who have now played the role. And I think that's a great thing. I think it's great when scripts can look back and consult the non-binary community and the trans community on depictions of these characters. I do still feel like it's good to have that level of representation, especially when it platforms non-binary performers, but at the same time, I would love if it could be a little bit more declarative in saying what it is and saying proudly, this is a non-binary character. I wish they felt like they could say that. I wish they felt like they could acknowledge that the relationship being portrayed on stage is ultimately a queer one and kind of explore that as a concept a little bit more. Because at least in the beginning, when I first saw the show, it felt like the character was definitely queer-coded, but we didn't want to use any of the words that came with that. That being said, you can still feel the emotion of that moment, and you get what it's meant to denote when the songs are performed. The other issue I have with the show is it's this feminist reworking of it that gives Juliet a lot more agency, and Romeo is cut from the title, and I'm all for that, and I think that is fantastic. But I think the way that they've portrayed Romeo doesn't necessarily make the most sense for this, because I think he gets unfairly maligned. The character of Romeo, as they have envisioned him, he gets called a douche, and he gets criticised a lot when it's never really clear exactly what he did. Juliet comes to find out that prior to their relationship, he'd had a lot of previous girlfriends, but it's never implied that he was having an affair, that he cheated on her, that he was seeing anyone else at the same time, or that his feelings for her were anything less than genuine. Only that she wasn't the first person he had had those feelings for. So when Anne Hathaway calls him a douche, and then he's like, "No, I am a douche," and then everyone cheers and laughs about it, I'm like, we never really see why. We don't see any behaviour from him that justifies that characterisation. We just see him chasing after Juliet and trying to win her back. So I feel the show is slightly unfair to Romeo. That's my 2 cents. So let me talk to you about some of my favourite moments in the show. When I first saw it, and they did the mashup of Teenage Dream and Break Free, and you first realised it was going to be a mashup and they were going to have the two songs at the same time. I mean, I think Glee is probably the forerunner of this musical trend, and Glee is owed a lot of thanks for this. But the joy that I felt, the smile that appeared on my face when I realised we were getting these two characters performing this mashup, I thought that was just tremendous and fantastic. In terms of being crowd-pleasing, I think a lot of people would say that the boy band performing Backstreet's Back towards the end of the show is probably the most crowd-pleasing moment. It gets a huge response, people clap and cheer along, it gets confetti cannons. It doesn't really fit particularly neatly into the show, and they shoehorn it in and they find a way of making it work, but people love it. It gets a huge response, and I get that. I've never been as big a Backstreet Boys fan as I am for, like, the Britney stuff and the Katy Perry and the Ariana Grande stuff, so, you know, that was never going to be for me. My other one is all about staging. I will never get over how well One Less Problem / Can't Feel My Face is staged in the show, and the choreography and the way that they use the two revolve levels and one of them becomes a platform. I just love the way that that number is staged, and I love the energy of it, and I think the soul of the show is right there in that number. I like a lot of the big ballady moments as well. One More Try doesn't do as much for me as Anne Hathaway's big song, The Way It Is, and Not a Girl, Not Yet a Woman, but I like the way that One More Try is staged with the bench flying over. The whole thing is a visual feast, and Luke Sheppard has ensured that in every single number we have something to hear that's beautiful, but we also have something to look at that is beautiful as well. The show never feels samey, and it feels quite short for all of that, even though it's not that short a show. But that has been my mega review of & Juliet. If there's anything else you would like to know my thoughts about the show, if I've left anything out, comment down below and I will be sure to let you know my thoughts. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you have enjoyed. If you did, make sure to subscribe to my Stagey YouTube channel for many more reviews, including my Broadway reviews coming very soon. It is ridiculous to say that. I hope that everyone is staying safe and that you have a stagey day. For 10 more seconds, I'm Mickey Joe Theatre. Oh my god, hey. Thanks for watching, have a stagey day. Subscribe!